It's the Brian Lehrer Show. I'm producer Amina Serna, filling in for Brian today. Good morning again, everyone. Now we'll talk about family, faith, and the rituals that make a home feel like a home, especially when that home holds more than one tradition. In a recent New York Times newsletter, Jessica Gross describes a moment she looked around her living room at a Christmas tree, her great-grandmother's menorah from Vienna, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation on the TV, and yes, a twerking Christmas cat on the mantle. That was the moment she realized her interfaith family had finally created a holiday world that felt organically theirs. She writes about the years of worrying whether she'd put her thumb on the scale toward Judaism, and then the surprising ease that came as her daughters grew older and began making their own choices about what traditions mattered to them. So today, how do families blend traditions, beliefs, and holidays? What does it mean to raise children with a combination of actual religious observance and cherished objects and in-jokes that become their own? And what can we all learn from how kids engage with these rituals? Jessica Gross is an opinion writer at the New York Times, and she joins us now. Hi, Jessica. Welcome back to WNYC.
Hi, thanks so much for having me back on.
You write about a long period of trial and error with some of these traditions. What were the questions you found yourself wrestling with in those early years before things finally got settled?
My husband and I were not raised super observant. We both went to church and or temple, but neither of us had faith that we necessarily felt like we knew exactly how to pass down to our children. And then it's another layer of difficulty or challenge or thoughtfulness, however you want to put it, of the fact that we obviously come from different religious traditions. And when our kids were little, and everything has to be sort of didactic when your kids are in preschool and they sort of barely understand what you're talking about. Anyway, I actually remember one of my younger daughter's classmates told her that when it rained, that meant Jesus was crying. And she was just like, I don't know what any of those words mean. So you're having to just, from osmosis, from them being in the world, having to explain and contextualize a lot of things, even when they are in, one faith, one sort of church tradition. And so I think we felt more uncomfortable when they couldn't give us feedback, when their understanding of observance and faith was minimal, just because cognitively, you're not going to have a deep conversation with a 3-year-old. You're still explaining to them how the world works. So what has been such a pleasant surprise for me as they are older, they are now 9 and 13, they have really strong feelings about the rituals we do, about attending faith services on both sides. And a lot of readers had a feedback like, oh, isn't this confusing for them? And they don't seem confused at all. I mean, look, maybe they'll take it up with their therapist in 15 years, but it does feel like we have blended it successfully in a way that makes sense for our family and the values that we are trying to teach our children. And so at the end of the day, it is sort of those core values of religion and faith and the family gatherings that occur around these holiday moments, that is what is important to us, and it is what appears to be important to our kids.
And listeners, if you're in an interfaith family or a family that blends traditions of any kind, what rituals have you created that feel uniquely yours? Jessica Gross was just talking to us about some core family values. What do those traditions and rituals maybe incorporate from your values? What worked for you, and what did your kids teach you along the way? 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. You can also text that number. Jessica, you've said that you didn't want to, quote, put your thumb on the scale toward Judaism, but you also didn't want your kids to absorb only the default culture around them. So how did you try to find that middle path as a new parent?
So when I was growing up, both my parents are Jewish. We never had a Christmas tree. On the Christian holidays, my dad actually usually worked and covered for his colleagues because he thought that that was the right thing to do as someone who wasn't observing the holidays. And it was very clear to me that sort of we were outside the mainstream culture. But so I felt like we had to be a little bit more intentional about teaching them about Judaism because even here in Brooklyn, which has, I believe, the greatest percentage of Jews anywhere in the United States, the predominant religion of their peers and also of American society is Christianity. So they are going to understand the holidays that exist outside the Jewish faith without us having to do anything. But I did feel like we had home court advantage because my in-laws are in San Francisco. My kids see them several times a year, but it's not the same as with my parents who they're seeing every single week. And so I didn't want to feel like we were overbearing and over indexing on our traditions without really bringing in his side of the family and the things that were important to them and the traditions and sort of cultural moments that aren't necessarily, deeply religious. You mentioned the twerking cat. Obviously, that is not, going to mass on Christmas Eve. But, just including all of these little things and its decisions and moments that sort of add up over the years and can be included into one cohesive whole.
Let's go to a caller. We have Mari calling from Switzerland. Hi, Mari. You're on WNYC.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I told your screener I grew up Lutheran and obviously always celebrated Christmas. And I married a Jewish man and converted to Judaism. And I did miss Christmas. When I was growing up, my uncle's birthday is December 24th, and so we always had red velvet cake for Christmas Eve and celebrated his birthday with him. And a few years after getting married, our daughter was born on December 24th. And so now we celebrate her birthday on Christmas Eve with red velvet cake. And so we have the same tradition. It's just through the birthdays instead of through the religious holiday.
Oh, that's so interesting. Mari, thank you so much for calling us all the way from Switzerland. And again, listeners, we welcome your calls and stories here. If your family mixes traditions or holidays from different backgrounds, what have you come up with and what feels like your own way of celebrating? Tell us what you do and how it works for you. 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. Jessica, you described the way young kids sometimes interpret religion through their own logic. You had mentioned the Jesus crying anecdote. And also you read about how your daughter was asking whether nuns in The Sound of Music were Jewish because they resisted the Nazis. What did moments like that teach you about how children come to understand belief?
So I don't think moments like that taught me about how children come to understand belief, but I do feel like conversations with my children over the years absolutely have, because they are making sense of the world in their own ways, even outside of the religious history or faith-based knowledge that they are getting through Hebrew school or through just the history of religion that they have been learning in their actual regular school. So I actually find that the deepest conversations that I have with my children about their beliefs are in sort of random moments. I mean, I think my older daughter is an unusually existential child, but since she was 8 or 9, she will ask us questions about the afterlife, and she will ask us questions about what if the reality that she is living is not the only reality. And it's like, where did you come up with that? And it's amazing. I mean, it is amazing to have these conversations with both of them. And, what we don't have in my household is sort of there is only one answer to these questions. I think if you are much more observant in various denominations, your family may have only one answer to these questions, but that's not the culture or belief system of our family. So it has been so beautiful, honestly, to watch their little minds work and to watch them making sense of not only our family's tradition or what they're learning, but just what's going on in their minds.
Let's take another call. Brandy in Brooklyn, you're on WNYC. Hi, Brandy.
Hi, how are you? Good to talk to you. And I am so appreciative of this conversation. So thanks so much for having this. Jessica, you're like hitting everything that is my family's experience so far. So I was raised Christian. My husband is Jewish. I'm Black. My husband is white and Jewish. And so we have like biracial interfaith kids who are being raised here in Brooklyn. Like they go to Hebrew school, but their Hebrew school is super like interfaith, like a lot of the and we sought it out because of that. Shout out to Fig Tree. But we sought it out because they are interfaith, and like the person who started it has also like a Black husband, but was raised in a more conservative Jewish faith and wanted her kids to not feel out of place in like, synagogue or anything. But I also take my kids to church out in like Queens. There's like our Greater Allen AME Church. So they get like a Black and cultural experience, as well as like the religious understanding of that side of their family. We also celebrate Kwanzaa. So like which isn't a religious holiday, but like a cultural. So like we roll up all of these cultural and religious, I guess, experiences into almost like an educational way of talking to our kids about it. So, I mean, and as I think anybody would do, if you're Christian and you're talking to your kids about Judaism, like you would explain it as like, well, they believe this, or vice versa, like Christians believe this. So we kind of explain it like that because we're not super religious, but we do, we celebrate Shabbat, like we do the high holidays, we go to church on Christmas and Easter, but explaining it in a way that is almost educational and informative rather than like doctrine and like you must believe this or that, which, I guess if you're super religious, that would be hard for you. But for my kids, like they understand it because they understand it as like, oh, well, these people believe this, these people believe that. We are both. We can choose which one to believe. When we're older, we can pick one if we want. But I think that it's been great for us to kind of teach them in a way that kind of, I guess, teaches from a longer lens rather than, kind of like beating it into them like this is what you must believe. And I think they appreciate it a lot more and understand not just their own cultures, but other people's as well from, the standpoint of like, wow, you believe this. That's really interesting.
Brandy, thank you so much for your call. What a great story. Jessica, another text, kind of similar in terms of incorporating not just faith, but also culture. My partner is white and I'm South Asian, and we celebrated Thanksgiving by making a meal of biryani with sweet potatoes and a cranberry raita with apples. So I do want to extend the invite. Also, we're talking a little bit about sort of end of the year holidays. Obviously this year that's going to be Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa. Some other years, Ramadan and Eid will fall on this month, and several others. So I just want to invite a broader set of calls as well. Even if you don't celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah, maybe New Year's Eve is very special for you and your family. Maybe like my family, you buy a Christmas tree for New Year's Eve and you call it a New Year's Eve tree for some random unknown reason. Give us a call. We can hear your stories. We'd love to hear your stories at 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. Jessica, the caller Brandy there was talking about how her kids are sort of influencing what they want to, take from each cultural and religious background of their parents. You read about how your older daughter chose Hebrew school at the age of 10 and how that shifted things for your family. So what did it change when she took a step toward one tradition on her own terms?
It has been really beautiful for her, and I loved hearing that caller's story, and it felt like such a New York City story because there's just such a melding of every kind of religion and culture here. And so that our kids can have that opportunity to have friends and peers who are all different backgrounds at all times. And one thing that I don't talk about in the piece, but that I did experience growing up, is I would go to church with my friends' families when, if I was sleeping over Saturday, Sunday morning, I would just go with them. And I feel like, I don't know if that happens anymore, and I wish that it would. I never saw it as they were trying to convert me. I was always just like, oh, this is a window into another family's culture, and they are opening it up to me in a way that felt very welcoming. So I just wanted to thank that caller for making that point. But my daughter's decision to go to Hebrew school has made her feel much more part of a Jewish community of her own peers, so of sort of 12 and 13-year-olds. And it has encouraged her not only to sort of think more deeply about her beliefs, but because of the uniqueness of the Jewish tradition and of being bat mitzvahed, she's learning Hebrew, which is really cool for her, and it works her brain in a new way. And so there's just been sort of numerous benefits of the whole process for her, and her bat mitzvah will be next month, and we are all very much looking forward to it.
Let's go to another caller. Allison in Teaneck, you're on WNYC. Hi, Allison.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I grew up in Westchester, Pennsylvania, 2 words, Westchester, not like New York. There were very few Jews. I grew up completely assimilated. My best friends were always Catholic. I know the words to a lot of Christmas music, but we were Jewish. I grew up, I became an Orthodox Jew. I married an Orthodox Jew, and we appreciate Christmas music. We know the words. We were going into our kosher Dunkin' Donuts one day, and a man in the parking lot was very confused. My husband was singing Christmas music, and he looked at us. He was an Asian gentleman who was American, and he said, wait, because we looked Orthodox. He's like, wait, you're not supposed to know the words to Christmas music. And my husband and I are like, we like Christmas music. It's very cheerful. It's very, very pretty. So we've raised our kids with the same appreciation for Christmas music. We love the lights that people put up outside their homes or the reindeer antlers on their cars. We appreciate it, and we teach our kids who go to yeshiva. We teach them it's not our tradition, but we can still be respectful and appreciative of the beauty that it gives to our community, too. We see it, we hear it, we love it. So we just pass it on to our kids, and hopefully we're not confusing them too much.
Allison, thank you so much for your call. We have 2 callers on the line who are coming from a slightly different perspectives, definitely celebratory in nature. Patrick in West Orange, New Jersey. Hi, you're on WNYC.
Hello?
Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, hi, Amina. Thank you for taking my call. Yes.
Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, great, interesting conversation, discussion. Appreciate it. Coming from a little different perspective, you mentioned Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa, that holidays that occur in December, but there's another one you didn't mention that occurs in December. It's called Human Light, and that's the secular December holiday for non-religious folks, Human Light, and that occurs on December 23rd. And I'm actually going to a big Human Light celebration party this weekend on Sunday here in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And it's for people it's a holiday for people who are not following a religious tradition, who are humanist-oriented, secular, non-theistic people. And we celebrate the values of humanity, reason, compassion, hope, people working together to build a better future using our human capacities here on Earth, not concerned with the afterlife or other supernatural beliefs. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important. There's probably a lot of people in the New York area who are secular, non-theistic type of people that might be interested in celebrating Human Light in December as a expressly secular, entirely non-religious type of holiday in December.
It's a great invite for those listening who might be interested. Patrick, can I ask you just briefly, how do you celebrate?
Well, any group or family, it can do various different things. It's really a social gathering. It's a social gathering like any kind of holiday celebration. Sure. And, it can involve events I've been to. There's always a meal, there's drinking, music, entertainment maybe, candle lighting ceremony maybe to commemorate the values of Human Light. It's very open ended as to what you do or how you do to celebrate.
Awesome.
The holiday was created in 2001, so 25 years old now, but that's still very new compared to most of the other December holidays. So how you celebrate is very open-ended.
Thank you so
but
much.
It's mainly around celebrating our human values about reason and compassion and people working together to build a better future in the here and now.
Thank you so much for your call. Let's take another caller. Deborah in Branchville. Hi, you're on WNYC.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. Well, I don't be, I'm more spiritual than religious, but I always remark on the fact that many people don't realize that Christmas is actually just the first day of Christmas, and like the song, The 12 Days of Christmas, because sometimes money or just circumstance make me late. If I did want to put up a tree, maybe I couldn't afford a tree, but I always take comfort in the fact that even if I don't get anything up by actual Christmas Day, there are 12 days of Christmas leading to January 6th, which is the Epiphany. And the Epiphany is the actual day when the Magi, the three kings, and that's also why it's called Three Kings Day, finally found Jesus in Bethlehem. In addition to that, there are two other things. My mother was British, and I lived in London at one time, and the British are so much more civilized than us. We have Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, but they have Boxing Day, which is the third day, and that is also a day off. So imagine having to, if we as Americans were able to have an extra day so we could decompress from all the stuff that went on before Christmas. And Boxing Day was started to literally box up leftover food and other things to give to the poor, which is also a lovely idea. And last but not least, let us not forget the one established by Seinfeld, Festivus, the holiday for the rest of us.
Deborah, thank you so much for that call and breaking it all down for us. On that lighter note of Festivus, which actually a few listeners are texting and calling in about, Jessica, your essay does talk about some of the lighter rituals. Seinfeld mentioned there on the call, but there are movies, ornaments, inside jokes that you write about. What do these moments bring to a blended household that the more formal observances don't always capture, you think?
I got so many beautiful reader notes before I wrote this piece because I had put a call out in the newsletter soliciting them. And they were ways of family bonding. They were not strictly religious, though sometimes they were, but they allowed people to feel a warmness and connection to the past. And so, there was one reader who wrote in about how her family didn't have that much money growing up, but her mom would be rushing to finish the homemade gifts that she was making. She was a great seamstress, and her dad would take the kids out to KFC. And it was always KFC every time. And now she and all her siblings still have KFC every single Christmas. And that is what makes it feel like it is the beginning of the holiday season. And it is a way, I think they've been doing this for 50 years, if I remember the details of this reader email. And it's a way to honor family members who are no longer there, to remember this moment of their childhood, which had so much warmth despite not having many material things. And so many of the notes sounded that tone of this was a way for the family to feel connected to each other and their shared pasts.
Let's go to another call. So many good callers. Matt in Brooklyn, you're on WNYC. Hi, Matt.
Hey, woohoo! How's it going? Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, thanks for calling in.
I wanted to say it's been so cool to hear everybody talk about raising kids in these environments, because I am getting married in a month. And
congratulations.
I grew up, thank you. I grew up I'm half Puerto Rican and half Irish. My Irish family is half Catholic and half Jewish, and then my Puerto Rican family is half Presbyterian and half Rastafarian. And my fiance grew up Southern Baptist, really intensely. And so we've both gone through a fair amount, and our parents too, gone through a fair amount of semi-rigorous deconstruction. And so now that we're getting ready to start building our family, we've been doing a lot of thinking about what kind of, like, how building like a unique, I guess, holiday palette would look like for us. And it's been really inspiring to hear what everyone's been doing. One thing that we do already, in addition to making like a big Southern dinner on Christmas, which includes pernil in our case, is when I was a kid, my parents were both like always had to work too much and were too tired to really like get into the holidays. So I would always on Christmas Eve be like, are we getting a tree? Like, what's the deal? And then they would give me $20 to go down to where the Boy Scouts would sell trees, and by that point they'd be like $5. So I would spend the rest of it on like a tuna sub from the pizza place that was next door to where they sold them. And so now we have been eating tuna subs on Christmas Eve for the past like 5 or 6 years that we've been together.
Wow.
So
Matt.
It's fun.
Incredible. Incredible. Best of luck as you figure out your family holiday traditions. Jessica, I don't know, Matt was kind of, I think, asking for a little bit of advice there. I mean, is there any way to start thinking about blending a family? I mean, he has sort of this runway of 1 month to figure it out. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I would say that that is not true. You don't have just 1 month to figure it out. And it is something I feel sad that I put so much pressure on us to have it all figured out. I remember especially when my older daughter was born, I was like, oh my God, we have not figured out the exact answer about the right way we are going to impart these things to our children. And what I realized in the course of writing this essay is that it has evolved over time, and it will evolve with that. If you're just thoughtful and you put in the time to having the discussions and figuring out what feels right, what feels authentic to your families, and is the way to sort of appropriately both honor your beliefs and your rituals, it can evolve over time. It doesn't have to be figured out, and it will always be evolving. I mean, I loved hearing that caller's description of how subsequent generations have just blended further. Right. So I don't know what kinds of relationships my daughters are going to have as adults, or what religious backgrounds or faith or cultural backgrounds those people are going to come from. And so it is really something to, I think, look forward to rather than fear. The idea that it can continue to evolve and layer on new traditions.
That's all the time we have for today. Jessica Gross is an opinion writer at The New York Times. Her latest newsletter is titled What My Children Taught Me About Interfaith Tradition. Jessica, thanks so much for being with us, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.